I'm going to tell a bit of a story about how I developed in my life, in my career, which is about 30 or 40 years, a product and in a kind of way of navigating new media. And that's the culmination of what I'm going to talk about, but my story is actually how I got there. So, and if I were to say one thing about my career in general, there are two words. One is it's about screens, and it's also about space. So those are two things that combined together really have a great deal of meaning to me and to my career. And this new thing that we're going to look at the end is really a culmination of that. So I'd like to start with a chart. This particular chart is something that I first made about 15, maybe more than 15 years ago. And I had seen years ago and experienced virtual reality. So it's really about trying to express the story and the evolution of a screen, starting pre-screen into print and paintings and things before we had digital media. Even into photography. But what I will mention is I took the tour of the Villa Fernandina, yes, yeah, yesterday. Sorry, I blanked on the name, but the wonderful villa right across the way there. And in the upstairs, in the perspective room, you can stand in one spot and you can see an example of during the Renaissance time the paintings of the pillars there. You can actually see the space open up. It's what is a flat wall with perspective suddenly opens up into another space. That's exactly what I'm doing. I'm taking media which is flat and opening it up and opening up the space. So I thought that was very interesting. If you've not seen it, have a look. But if I have a line there drawn past sort of the evolution of media, which is fairly obvious. Film and video, where you look at a screen, it's still flat, but because there's motion there, it starts to set up the impression, the illusion that there's space through there, and designing space through the screen. The line that's drawn there is, at some point, some years ago, we made interactive media, and conceptually our hand is reaching through the screen and we're moving that content around, we're affected. But that little orange dot is us, it's the viewer and our relationship to that screen. I thought at this time that virtual reality would lead us into a place where we step through. I tried virtual reality. You step through a screen. There's no more rectangle. There's no screen anymore. We step into a space of stuff. But actually, another thing that happens is this, where if you look at that animation at the bottom, through augmented reality and stereo 3D, I started looking at that screens can start to describe a space and actually extend things into the space. They actually create a space. So that space that you would have stepped into is actually being created by a screen. So that's the essence of the idea. So it's that lower area that I'm going to focus on. So zooming into that, the idea of creating space with screens can be described this way. This is the last chart that I'll show. But if you think of a screen as describing this kind of space, the orange thing being the viewer, and in my career as a broadcast designer, I designed for the screen as a surface. It's like a dashboard. Information graphics on a news program. You see the scene beyond, but you see information. So that's a valid place. But extending beyond in the distance is this, I call it the content space. It's the illusion of a world back there. And I've been involved for many years in that field through computer graphics, motion graphics. That's what we do. We design information and graphics relating to media and place it back in space. The most interesting one, which will culminate in here, is what I'm calling the interaction space, the interactive space. And that's this place in front, between the viewer and the screen. And we'll experience that a little bit later. So the story, I want to lead you down the story of starting with what I say computer graphics. I began my career in the late 70s. It's quite a while ago. And my career is following the train of the advancement of computer graphics, the CGI movement, as we call it. I was involved in the very early days of that. And in 78, I could show you an example here, for example, of telling stories in space that you create as an illusion using computer technology. I was involved in the very early days, much different than the days of computers that we have now with raster graphics. This is what I'm going to show you now is, here's an example. If you watch this, I didn't have the film of it, but you can see a slideshow of it. We created a sort of a wireframe trip that we took down it was a commercial for that company, an auto stereo. It was for France, and it was for about a 45-second commercial. But that was involved, my first experience, this is a long time ago. I'm showing you examples of the start of the process. I mean, I could show you the culmination of really fantastic end-in graphics, but to me, if I show you that exciting time, which is the beginning of a medium, this is the beginning, what I showed you was in the beginning of computer graphics, some of the first things that went on television. Then there's also the example, I'll take you a bit further down the road to maybe around 1998. This example is from the Winter Olympics. I worked on 3 of the Winter Olympics with CBS Network, and this is what used to be preceding this, some maybe 10 years before this, was actually just title cards in television. But we take those graphics, titles, and made a world out of them and moved through them. So this is an example of that. And if you take it a little bit further, even getting closer to where I am now, is the idea of taking information and placing it in space. And that illusion of being able to create a space and actually inform and present information and data. So this example is something for 1998 in the Olympics, where we built the downhill course in Nagano. We're now at the top. I'm just showing you little bits of it here. So we're taking a trip down the course, but notice that information is in the space. The altitude as you go down is in the space. As you move further down the course, we're going to go past a little hill here and go down. Now at this point, you'll see graphics coming up which describe certain regions and areas. So maybe I'll jump down to the bottom of the course. And this is the compression turn, a really tight turn. But rather than label that as a dashboard graphic, I'm actually creating it as a part of the scene. You actually go through it, including as I mentioned, you've got the altitude dropping as you go down. So this was an easier task, believe it or not, in CGI to do this, in computer graphics. But we talked quite a bit at that time in 1998 about how can we take more graphics in live-action scenes and place the graphics in the scene. We see this in sports coverage today. They're starting to put more and more through technology to put the graphics in the scene. So that was the dream we had back then, so to be able to do that. And I would say another example, this example is actually an early...
Everybody has long hair. Because that way.
Have to take the audio out of this one, sorry about that. Right, very good. So that's it. Sorry about that. What you just saw there, sort of jarringly with that music, is from 1994. This was a working system from Time Warner Cable, 1994, and it was for interactive television. It was a system called a full service network, But what I was trying to do in this case is to try to make it look not like a lot of other interactive television at that time would be very flat things to the screen, but to actually make it look like broadcast graphics. So that was the intent here, but it was quite some time ago. It was an early case of that. Now to jump a little bit forward, I noticed that the diagram on the left, I have now moved us to the space in front of the television. So this is the new thing that I've been thinking about, and I want to show you how I got there. This particular drawing, I worked on with a team of a lot of people working on Minority Report. I was not the only one, but it was a great project, and my work was in 1999. This is a sketch of an idea that we were proposing. We proposed a lot of digital ideas. What would the future be like? That was the assignment. What's the future like? Maybe 60 years from where we were. Certainly gesture was an idea. What this is notice in that little drawing down there, the little arrow going up to it, what I was proposing was the idea that, of course, we all said that video in the future is wallpaper, so that we don't really have to have any longer. We do not have to have go up to and touch screens. I mean, touch was a thing now. Touch is a basic core interaction thing now, and it's beautiful being able to touch a screen. But if you're distant from the screen and you can't touch it, how do you interact with it? So one way is to use gesture and to actually visually project things so it would track me. I'm walking around, and that interface is tracking me. This is all doable today, and it's actually very interesting, the idea that we're using the environment and 3D space to actually help us with a different kind of experience that might be better. Now, for example, I'll give you an example. If we said that there was a really large projected image that we could interact with, that's not so good to get right up close to it. I mean, you kind of want to have some distance. So being able to do this has some value. If I were to diagram that and show you, the idea is that, look at this as a television example, and maybe there's an interface at the bottom. So what you do is you kind of push the TV back with 3D and pull forward into the space some kind of other choices you have. And this next diagram is showing something that I'll show in 3D later. We'll experience this, which is being able to project kind of options of things and some information from the web along with television in 3D space. So you can navigate it with your hands, you can navigate with other devices, but this is sort of what that would look like. What's really going on here, and it is so fascinating to me, is we've had television for a long time. And I would venture to guess that many of you, when you're watching television, a certain percent of that time, you're on your computer, you're on another device. So it's hard for us not to kind of combine those two worlds together. There are attempts to try to do that singularly through your cable company and through smart apps or other things, but to really combine that as a single experience is what I'm attempting to do with this new idea. So it's augmenting, in a sense, it's augmented television. And in some respects, the television becomes a context for doing something else. And in many cases when I'm watching television, the television is maybe the second screen, and what I'm doing with other things is actually my primary entertainment, information, communication, and other things in front of that. So it's a question, how do we kind of put those two things together, that digital pairing. What I would say about that, another factor that's very interesting is that media that comes to the television screens is highly controlled by distributors and brands. In other words, the cable companies that bring us that there are a lot of rules and regulations around what that media that comes to, and a lot of rights management and all kinds of things that come to that business of bringing media to my television screen. But the space that's in front is more privately owned by the user. It's a user experience. When you sit with your tablet in front of there, no one says to you, you can't pair that with this. I can't check this out against what's behind there. We do that on our own. And this new system of 3D is saying that this is a new space over here. It is open for interaction and pairing by the audience. And I find that a really interesting possibility, and a possibility of hope. I mean, which is the topic of this last session. So the statement I would make is that the expanded media space is controlled, this new one, is controlled by the viewers. What I would like to show a little bit, you'll see it a bit later, is something called In Air. It's a project, and we'll be using the 3D glasses. So that's where I'll stop right now. Thank you. What I'd like to show now is a visual demonstration of what I talked about earlier. So with this kind of project, we're delivering the ability, called In Air, to access information. What you see on the left in 3D is the ability to navigate content which is coming in this case, content from NASA, from the web. And we can explore, for example, I'm just using my mobile phone here. We can navigate content coming from the internet, which is in this case a 3D model, which I'm navigating with a smartphone, just with gestures. There's no graphics on the phone, so I can actually learn about the various parts on the spacecraft. I can also look at several other things. The model is that when the content comes up on the right-hand side, you have kind of a stack of various things. And in this case, there's down in the kind of floating in 3D in front of you, you'll be able to see the trajectories of the two spacecraft, Voyager 1 and Voyager 2. So if I navigate further, you have floating in 3D again, sort of a way to sort of see and navigate through the various planets, the 4 main planets that were passed and photographed for the first time, actually, by up close by the Voyager. So we're starting with Jupiter. We can go to Saturn. You say they light up down in your 3D model, but they're just giving you a little bit of information. I can also move down to and look at photos, which is really one of the beautiful things to be able to pull in and navigate while you're watching the show still in the background and hearing the audio. I can navigate through it. These are a collection of photos from the NASA site, being able to see photos from, in this case, Jupiter. Now we're looking at photos from Neptune. So a way to sort of see what the purpose of that, one of the purposes of that flight was to photograph those planets for the first time up close. Here's Uranus, even some of its moons, and we're looking at Neptune. This was amazing. The Neptune, again, is it's the most distant planet out in the solar system, and really the first time we had seen photos from that. So that was what we see there. What I'd like to also show is really quickly is the ability to perhaps navigate. I'm going to bring up a news channel here. So in this case, it's a Reuniversity RT channel that I'm watching news, and I'm going to access again, push it back, and access in 3D my web content modules. And for each person, we select and use quite bespoke whatever we like. Everyone in this room would probably have something different playing over there. And in this case, perhaps there's a module from RT, so I can read other articles that are presented and other photographs and other things from RT. In this case, for me, I also track the New York Times. So I'm bringing in related articles to that story from in 3D, coming out of the room so you can navigate them. And if I just move my hand up and down like this, or to gesture with my smartphone, I can process and move these things around. So in this case, you have some charts, the various distances that the missiles could travel, and certain kinds of information like that. Also, of course, a direct link in to Wikipedia information, which there's the summary from Wikipedia on the 2013 missile Korean crisis. Another chart that was very valuable to this, that was important, was kind of a listing over time of the various missile launches from North Korea. So the idea here is that you're pulling up other kinds of information from the web that are related to what you have. And of course, what's also true is that could just be my Facebook. Many of us are navigating with our smartphones and from other tablets and things through various kinds of information. So just being able to do that quickly is a great value. And also things like Twitter, being able to bring up my Twitter feed. And maybe my personal one has a section on tweets on Apple News. So bringing in the way that we each would, in our own way, navigate through those various kinds of collections and aggregations of content. Let's see, and of course, I think that's main, that I'm covering the main idea. So when you see this in 3D, in full 3D. It's quite spectacular, and all these objects are floating in space in your room, and you navigate them. So thank you very much.